Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's market review. This is Razak at CMTrading. Today is February 6, 2023, and today is Monday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, we're watching gold nosedive below 1900. But first, no major economic events scheduled for today, but as the week moves on, we will have some major events. Looking at the various markets that have been rattled and shaken. Starting out with the Forex symbols, the US dollar gains versus the major pairs, specifically against the euro and the Japanese yen. Now looking at the indices, the NASDAQ tapers and lower, while the Dow Jones remains unchanged, not really trading. Jumping into commodities, gold tumbles while oil trades lower as well. Looking at the stocks, they all retreated, but specifically Amazon takes a dive, a big gap down for Amazon. And lastly, looking at cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin dips below 23K. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So here we go. We're starting with the Euro USD, and you can see this major retracement from 110 ostensibly down to 107.86. Now that has been the biggest retracements that we've had on a 2-day period since we've gone orbital from 96. So that's a major retracement. Now we're in between our two moving averages, okay, the 30-day moving average and the 8-day moving average. That is a major threshold. So just be aware that we may see some sort of pivot up or a challenge up, okay, to be a double top. I would wait it out first, because if we look at a weekly, we haven't broken that 8-day moving average as closely. So keep that in mind. Now jumping into the Japanese yen, a big gap up this morning for the dollar getting stronger versus the Japanese yen. It is still there. Let's see if it fills the gap. Okay, I'm very suspicious it's going to fill the gap, but be aware of it. Now looking at a weekly, that hit support at 126-ish level, 127, and it jumped out of it. Now this is hindsight 2020, but still it may still develop itself into a head and shoulder formation. So keep that in mind. Just like that should be something to keep in the back of your mind. 137 would be potentially a resistance-ish area. Now jumping into the British pound, also dollar gaining versus there, 120 from 124. That's a decent move. And so I would wait it out. Looking at the Australian dollar, it also got stronger. So it's across the board. It's everything. It's systemic, and that's understandable. Now jumping into commodities, gold, look at that. Went from 1950 down to 1860, a 100-point move, and now it is bouncing off 1876 right now. If we look at a daily, that is bouncing off supportish level. Okay, so I want to keep an eye on this, okay, because if we look at a weekly, we're right there on the moving average. Okay, so that is something to consider going into today's session. Now looking at the US market, starting out with the Dow Jones, not much doing here. Okay, we are trading at 33,863, did sell off for all intents and purposes, but it's trading in a very tight range. So keep that in mind as we're looking at today's session. Looking at the NASDAQ, that retraced a little bit further. Okay, that actually hit a high much higher, okay, almost hitting 13,000, but then it retraced down to 12,557. So it did retrace significantly more if we look at percentages. Now looking at the individual stocks, looking at Amazon, this is the one that I'm really concerned about because it did gap up and then gap down. That's a V formation. That means that it may continue selling off, okay, and that spike was like a fake out breakout. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go into today's session. Cisco also traded lower, Intel traded lower. You know, we traded lower across the board, but the question is, which is the weakest link? If we look at Facebook, it held itself up. Okay, it had that gap up, but it didn't sell off as aggressively as did Amazon. So keep that in mind looking at today's session. And looking at Apple, after it came out with its great news last week, it's holding its own. So there's a little bit of a parity here between Amazon and the rest of the market. So the Amazon is the weakest one, and some of these others are still maintaining themselves. So I don't anticipate that we're going to have a major sell-off. It's also people taking money off the table as some of these stocks have gained so nicely coming into this year. Now lastly, looking at Bitcoin dipping below 23K, nothing to be worried about, just it is at the bottom of its range, and this will be a telltale sign to see if it's really been resilient, and this breakout from 16,000 to 24,000 was not just a spike, that it is a new level that it's trading at. So this 22,700 is a very important range for it to bounce off of. So keep an eye on this, because if it does bounce off of it, it's truly stronger. Okay, so that's something to look forward to today. This is Fred Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day.